And in this video, I'm gonna share with you a couple of translation activities that may be useful for you while trying to improve some language accuracy and develop specific translation skills in your students. Okay? Well, first of all, I would like to start this video sharing with you some important background about the use of translation as a teaching method in the ELT process and on the time. Okay, so translation was a significant part of the ELT for a long time, as we already know, and then a significant missing part for a long time also as well. Why? Because at the beginning of the second language acquisition, translation was the method in which many people learned how to speak or to communicate in another language. Okay, well, with the arrival and then the total dominance of the communicative methodology, the new ones that we know, translation was quickly consigned to the past, along with other traditional tools such as dictation, reading aloud, and drills. Okay? Well, however, it and these other abandoned activities are now a feature in many communicative classrooms and successful aids to learning. Although the approach to using them has changed. As Dove says, teachers and students now use translation to learn rather than learning translation. Okay, so here is an important point. Nowadays, when we as English teachers include translation activities in our classes, we intend our students to use these activities as a resource to learn, as a way in which they can learn more about the second language rather than just translate something that we want. Okay, so this is something important. Nowadays, we need to give this sense to the translation activity, that we can show the students that translated can be a way in which they can learn rather than just do a task. Okay, well, I'm going to continue with this brief background. Modern translation activities usually move from L1 to L2, although the opposite direction can be seen in lessons with more specific aims. And which one of the activities that I'm going to share with you is aimed to have clear communicative aims, a real cognitive depth, show high motivation levels, and can produce impressive communicative results. So, translation is not something bad or is not something wrong that we shouldn't include in our classes. What we need to be careful about is that we need to give an intention to these translation activities. And that is the way we can make translation and a powerful tool while learning a second language. Okay, well, the first activity that I'm going to share with you is one that I use with my secondary students. I call it frutas y verduras because I mainly use this while we are, reviewing and learning some vocabulary. Okay, well, translation exercise ensure that grammar and vocabulary are taught explicitly and demand a focus on accuracy. So that is something important. When our students are learning, specific grammar structures or vocabulary, they need to be precise. And this example of translation activity can help our students to develop this accuracy while they are, using the grammar structure taught or the vocabulary learned. Okay, so translation can also be presented as a real-life activity that could be used while traveling to the target language country or as a future career. Okay, so what do I do, or what my students do in this frutas and verduras activity? First of all, I pair up my students. Then I give to each of my students a list of vocabulary that we have reviewed during the previous classes. In this case, the vocabulary of the words are related to frutas y verduras in Spanish, okay? Then, after I give this list to my students, one of them starts reading aloud the word, or a word from the list in this case in our mother language, that is Spanish. So, for example, I start this activity saying manzana. The other students have to say the word in the target language, in this case English. No, apple. Okay, and then they switch turns. So they continue with this until they finished the list, the entire list. Okay, so this activity helps my students, to learn vocabulary, specific vocabulary or grammar structures, and then to use it in a freer way. That's why it is very important. Okay. The second activity, I mainly use it with, advanced students. Well, at the secondary level, it is hard to say that I have, advanced students, but those students who have shown certain improvement, I like to use this activity with them because it helps them a lot, to develop this ability to switch from L1 to L2 and to find the appropriate word when they try to share something specific. Okay, because when we are learning a second language, it is kind of difficult to find the specific or the correct word that we want to say, because maybe we are lacking of some specific vocabulary about the experience or situation we're trying to share. So in this activity, what I mainly do, that I call it related words. Once again, I pair up my students. Then one of my students says a word or an expression in the target language. For example, I would say a piece of cake. So the other student has to say words that can be used to translate what he or she said. For example, so I said, piece of cake, facilito, no complicado, fácil, you see? And then the other student has to say another word or expression in the target language, in this case English, and his or her classmate has to say the word, translated to Spanish. I was thinking about a word that can be difficult to translate. For example, I was thinking about I have one here. For example, wave. Okay, ola de mar, movimiento del agua. So in this way, or using this activity, I aim that my students can develop this oblique translation skill in order to, find the way in which they can translate something from English to Spanish or to Spanish to English without losing the sense of the idea that is being, shared. And that is something that I like my students to do, because when they do this, I do believe that they improve their language skills, but not just in the way that they are going to be able to communicate, but also to understand how the language works. That is something important. Well, that's all from me in this video. I hope these two simple but I think meaningful activities can be useful for you in order to develop certain skills, certain translation skills in your students. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see us in the next video. Bye.